Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to you. You're watching a new episode of Encounter. And we have a new guest in today's episode. We have Srada Manna, who is a counselor for couples and also an instructor in mindfulness. She's also a lecturer at the University of Technology, Mauritius. Srada, a very warm welcome and thank you for being here in the studio of the MBC.
Thank you for inviting me, Roshan.
Srada, how do you find yourself being a couples counselor?
This is not a very common field. We do not hear much about couple counseling. We hear a lot about divorce, though. So there is somewhere a mismatch, because somewhere people do not know whom to see when they have problems in life or in couples. When we are sick, we go and see a doctor. When we have a toothache, we know we have to go to a dentist. But when we have family problems or relationship problems, we just don't want to see anyone because it seems very personal.
In Mauritius, at the moment, there are many divorces as well as many weddings. Maybe one more than the other. I'm not going to say which one is which. But either way, even if there are divorces less than weddings also, still, that's a lot of divorces.
Yes.
I wouldn't say only in Mauritius. I think it's a worldwide problem.
It is a worldwide problem.
Can you please share us a bit more? What is the main problem in terms of couples nowadays?
At the basis is the relationship, which is not working. So one thing is that we do not know ourselves enough, and then we want to fill those voids by getting married to someone, hoping that that person is going to fill that void. And the same goes for the other partner. He's looking or she's looking for something which they don't know that they have it inside, because as we say, everything, we should be complete beings. But here when we get into relationship, we are replaying our childhood.
We are replaying
our childhood. Yes, because the psychodynamic theory tells us that whatever we have lived, seen and heard, we continue doing that. So who we are as couples is how we have seen our parents. You are not even conscious of it. Some people come in the office and say, I don't want to be like my father, but they are behaving exactly like that. And a couple counselor sees that mismatch of, that is something that he's carrying with him.
So it adds to the fact that the person does not know who he or she really is.
And we all know that science has said that it's some people say it's 3 to 5% of our brains that we use. Others have said 7%, but I know it's very low. So the rest of it, what do we do with the 97%, let's say? It's all unconscious. So unconscious meaning that we are just, the behavior is just a knee-jerk reaction. We just do it.
It's just above the survival instinct.
I think it's much below. It's like we have the mind. We have the mind, and we have the mind as a whole. So we have the conscious mind. The pre-conscious mind are things that we can become aware of when we think about it. But there is the unconscious or the subconscious mind where everything is there ready to come up. So as soon as someone behaves with us, sometimes we don't want to be angry, but then we just flare up, you know? So that is the unconscious that is triggered and just comes on the surface. And of course, many people regret their behaviors like this. So in a couple, of course, there is a kind of dance going on, you know, where they are doing kind of the same thing, and both of them want to be happy is the interesting thing. Not only both of them, all human beings basically want to be happy, which makes a lot of sense.
It is their birthright to be happy.
Of course, yes. But then we do not know how to do that. So in couple counseling, what I do is mainly I let them express themselves without blaming, shaming, or criticizing the partner.
Because it's a lot of pent-up emotions inside.
A lot of crying and a lot of feelings that they maybe are not allowed or do not just come out in normal everyday life. So what we do is the behavior. Like we may snap at someone, But underneath, when you start talking about that problem, the emotion comes up because at last someone can understand what I'm saying.
So you act as a release of emotions?
A lot. Because once you start listening to the person, you give them the space. The space is theirs. The hour and a half is talking about them. But of course, it doesn't just go on all life story. I have to channel that somewhere to have them talk about them and not the other person. You know, he does that. And because of him, I'm not happy, or because of her. If she does that, I'll be happy. It doesn't work like that. So what happens in a couple counseling session is that somewhere in the session or later in the sessions, I have to have the person who is talking realize that, oh, I have a contribution in that.
Of course.
I'm doing something, then the action is triggered on the other side. So what the person can change is his or her action. It cannot change the other person.
Srada, it is a known fact that many people get married today in the search of happiness. But it is also known that when one gets married, one individual has to be happy and the other one has to already be happy, so that when they come together, they are happier. And I think, I wouldn't say only in Mauritius, but in Mauritius and also around the world, that people think that getting married will fill the void and attain happiness over and above, especially in Mauritius, all the peer and cultural pressure.
Yes.
So what is your experience and what's your take on all this?
Yes, so it's very vast, right? Like you hear yourself bringing in very deep concepts about culture and about what people want. So in general, of course, we want happiness. But most of the time, marriages are where parents want their children to get married, which is very normal. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think the main thing would be talking more about marriage, because it may seem like, okay, I'll get married, and then it may be like the time when we just met, or you know, we just go out, we are on our best dress and the best perfume and everything is best, and the best behavior, right?
Tout beau, tout neuf.
Ben oui, it's the best behavior that we put on. And as soon as we get married, we start sharing a roof, and then we see our partner just throwing the wet towel on the mattress, or you know, just keeping the teacup under the sofa and forgetting about it.
This is where the realities of the couple show up.
The reality hits, because that is who you are in everyday life.
Of course.
And this is who you continue to be in your marriage. You're not different, but now you're yourself in the marriage. It's no more the courting period where everything seems so rosy, right? So when reality hits, and then slowly that builds up. Oh my God, I didn't know that he or she is like that. What made me choose him or her? It builds up. So slowly those resentments build up, and then one day you just flare up and you say everything, and in a very bad way, because we have to know that when we talk about communication, 93% is nonverbal, gestures, tone of voice, eye contact.
Body language.
7% is verbal.
All right.
So the way it comes to the other person is really bad. I don't think we treat strangers as we treat our
close ones.
Close ones.
Yes, I have to agree with that. We show more compassion towards strangers, which is good, but we should be able to replicate it in our own houses.
Yes.
Srada, the issue does not seem to be communication, but it's the way we communicate which is the major issue.
Sure.
Especially the you game, the blame game.
Yes.
It's all communication, but probably not the right one.
Not the right way to do it, because we do, you mentioned the blame game and you mentioned the you messages, where I'm really saying you, and that doesn't look good for anyone. We feel threatened and we feel very hurt. The trust goes away. And there's also another thing that couples do a lot. It's mind reading, you know.
It's
in
like
my
reading
office,
in between the lines.
Reading in between the lines, and mind reading. I know what you're thinking about me, you know.
But is that true?
Yes, because when I ask, see, there's a big difference between the way men communicate and women communicate, males and females.
Men are from Mars, women are from Venus. They don't speak the same language.
We don't. Yet we are put together to live life in a peaceful way.
Yes.
So how does that happen? So here we see that we really have to understand male psychology for women and for men, women's psychology, and then come find that middle way.
So that's where you call Earth.
Yes, planet Earth, and live and breed and have children, have families. But it's really interesting because you are growing. And the real meaning of a couple life beyond, you know, getting married, having a family, having children, doing this and that, those are the doings. But really the spiritual aim of marriage is for both people to grow in that relationship. Because from the many people you've met, you've chosen that one.
Yes.
It seems that you have chosen, but there are theories that say that you are made to choose this person because he or she is going to trigger you where it really hurts.
From what I understand from what you're saying is couples have to go beyond the religious aspect of their marriage.
Sure. It's much beyond that.
So, Srada, what would be the first advices you would give to couples, especially nowadays, considering all the trouble that is going around and so many divorces?
Yeah.
I mean, it's always nice for couples to get along rather than getting separated.
It's just so beautiful when two people know what their aim is, why they are together, and they have a big responsibility. It can be so beautiful. Like, you are number one in my life, if I can tell that to my partner, and I can feel that I'm really number one for the other person. That is the best thing. Actually, you can say it's nirvana on earth. You know, you live well, but it's not this way. And if they know they can grow beyond that. So the question that you asked me, I come back to it, it's training for those who are not yet into marriage or planning to get married, and for people who are married to seek help. Because, see, we are counselors, and for every little thing we don't run to a counselor because we have our the way we think. But when the problem is recurring year after year, 10, 20 years, we say, he's the same and she's the same. That is the problem, because we know that that is the thing that is surfacing all the time. And I like to say that there is a way. There is a way for people to live better.
So if after so many years the same problem is recurring, it's not even the problem of the couple, it's the individual's problem for not looking into the problem.
Yes. And when you are in a couple, it's usually more difficult because, well, an individual can come to me and say, you know, I want to work on my marriage, but my husband or my wife is not willing, right? There has to be a way to work with them, and there is, right? But the best is that both come, so that both support each other in the work, because that's not an easy work. You are challenging the brain to do differently. When people say that, I usually say that. When you do that, I do that. So it's just habitual patterns.
So there's no critical thinking also? And
there isn't. There is no awareness.
There's no awareness of
when it's done, then people say, oh, I regret having done that. And you know, very serious matters like violence, you know, aggression in the couple. They're not happy doing that.
But domestic violence is a major issue, isn't it?
It is. It is, because it's all about pent-up emotions. Like, I keep it, okay. I try to be cool in my couple at home, but then I'm just keeping everything inside. And what happens is that the body cannot hold it anymore, so it just comes out. And for the men, more, I know we have violence on both sides,
of course.
But for the men, he's physically stronger. So for him, it's just that upsurge of emotions that makes you do something. Otherwise, you can die, or you can have a stroke, or something as serious, you know. So when they are hitting, the pent-up things come out, and then they feel better. Oh, I'm sorry. I won't do that again. But then the problems are still there. We are not looking into the root cause of the problem.
So it's only solved at the surface level, but the problem remains after all the years at the root level.
The roots remain the same. We are just putting a balm on the wound, so it opens up again, you know.
All right, so we are not stopping the cause of the problem.
We are not.
So you mentioned training.
Yeah.
So what kind of training?
Training for people who are thinking of getting married. It's not like the 2-hour training we give, you know, to our couples. It's really about listening. See, listening. Like when I'm talking, you're not saying anything, right? So learning how to just put a band on our mouths for us to listen. Like when I'm talking, it's my point of view, it's my perspective. And what we teach to couples is making a summary of what you heard. Because this is about that person. What we normally do in supposed to be normal communications, when someone says something, we bring our perspective in that. So that person never feels heard. And it feels like you don't count.
Well, I'd rather listen, because if I'm saying something, I'm most probably saying something I already know. I'd rather learn something new.
When you listen, you learn a lot.
But, well, you're talking about listening. We had a guest on the show a couple of weeks ago. He said, you might be listening, but are you hearing? Because sometimes it just goes in one ear and goes out the other. But are you also hearing what the person says? And also, if you hear the person, is it a sign of respect to the person because you care for that, for your partner?
I think it is. It's a big sign of respect because you are looking at the person. I'll tell you one thing. When couples come in my office, I have them talk like this, close up, because they are intimate. They have been intimate people at least at some point in their life. They are not able to look at each other because there have been so much piled up in their minds that they are not able to just talk and look at each other, but they have to do it. That is the training. That is a big part of the training.
What other trainings should the couples do, or people who are thinking of getting married?
So in the, let's call it, I'm calling it premarital counseling, or even if partners do not get married and want to live together, that too, they need
Which is
that
very
training.
common nowadays.
It is common, whether we want it or not, it is common. So talking about so many things, about how would you like to spend your weekend? What about finance? Where do we go? What do we do? Because there isn't a balance in couple life because one of the two takes over. You know, so one is not living and the other is living fully at the expense of the other person.
People get married 25, 30 years in general around the world. You mentioned a problem with communication. There's a big responsibility on behalf of the parents of these couple, of the man and of the woman. Parents have a massive responsibility in their upbringing, in their ability to communicate, and also be a little bit more compassionate towards one another. I think there is a deeper problem underlying the problems within couples nowadays.
And I can say with my training and everything that I've done, that normally people don't listen. They are ready with their responses, and you know that they don't listen. Of course, I do that too sometimes. I can't listen sometimes, you know, because it's not about just going on and on listening in couple counseling. I have to intervene somewhere and stop, you know. So, but the most of the time, if people learn to listen, parents, like you said, the family is going to be a better place.
Surely, but my point, I'm coming to my point right now, is because, all right, parents have a responsibility. Couples sometimes go back to their childhood. But when you're 25, when you're 30, there's a big responsibility on the person in the couple themselves, because, I mean, you're 30, you're a big adult.
Exactly.
So at some point you have to assume your responsibilities and make up for it?
Yes, and that I would like people to do that more, because I think the problem is that they don't know. They're just getting in the current.
It's like going with the flow.
They're just going with the flow, and that is so fast, we know that. But I would like people to think more of, you know, yes, I'm in love now, but usually people think of my marriage is going to be the best because I'm okay. You know, that's what people think of when they get into a relationship. But just becoming more realistic, let me learn, because our system doesn't have learning communication skills. So we cannot blame anyone, whether it's parents or couples or individuals. No one, because if they were taught and they didn't know how to do it, then we would say, yes, you are at fault. But now, no.
Srada, let me draw a comparison. I have a very good friend of mine who told me that marriage is like a baby. You have to treat it like a baby for the first 2 years. You have to feed it. Then from 3 to 5, you have to teach the baby. Then in the childhood years from 5 to 12 is where they follow. And then comes the hardest, which is the teen years,
yes.
where the marriage is very rebellious. I'm not saying for everyone, but is there some truth to it, that a marriage is like a baby initially and it also grows up with the couple?
I think it is, because we're talking of the relationship compared to the baby. Yes, we have to nurture it, but in the beginning it's very high. When you think of the relationship when they are in love, that is top, right? So when they get married, it's still top, and then that goes a little bit down. But yes, your idea is that we have to nurture the relationship, because initially there has been some kind of love. So in couple counseling, we go back to that love. What is it that attracted you to that person? What happened? You know, so it's more of questioning.
What you said since the beginning of this program, I keep having a voice telling me that there's a lot of a spiritual aspect to the nurturing of a couple, and also a little bit of how to guide the couple going through hard times. Any advice or techniques that you give to the couple going forward when they've come to see you?
I think when you talk of advice, advice doesn't work. So we make, I should say it, yes. We ask them questions and make them say that they're, like I look for a buy-in from them. Otherwise they won't do anything.
A kind of affirmation?
It's something that they say that they will do. And advice coming even from me, they pay me, but they won't listen. So that is not a common thing to do. We don't give advices, but when we listen, we look for, you know, patterns of where the couple can go, and we ask them, you know, what is it that you can do from our work? And they say, it seems that I've been blaming my wife or my husband too much. So what can we do? Then we go back to the work itself. And in between, let's say they come in 10, 15 days, they have to be practicing that thing at home. Otherwise, nothing happens. It's just information.
All right,
they have
that makes sense.
to jump in the pool or in the ocean, let's say, to practice communication skills.
Srada, one last question before wrapping up this episode. The average age of getting married nowadays has gone up. It's not 25 to 30. It's more like 30, more towards 35 now, because youngsters are seeing what's been happening around them. But that's not such a bad thing. I mean, but at some point you have parents pressurizing children also. So it's like a biryani.
The very famous biryani. Yeah, it's a mix. So I think our responsibility is to educate people more around the real things of life. What is it, marriage? What am I looking for? Who am I? You know? So a lot of self-awareness of what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? And strength is not a problem, but when you go to weaknesses, when you say, oh, I don't listen. I know I don't listen because so many people have told me in my family. So why not learn that? Because that is going to be helpful with yourself. Listening to yourself is one thing. Listening to your colleague, or being able to talk properly to someone, to address a message to someone. So all that is communication skills. And I stress on that because that is a thing that's going to be helpful everywhere.
It's not only in the couple, but also outside other spheres of your own life.
Yeah, with parents, at work, and how the other thing, the main thing is dealing with conflicts. What do I do when there is a conflict?
Is your ability to negotiate through communication.
Yep.
Yes, that makes sense.
Yep.
And also with children one day, if the couple has children.
Yes, it's a long standing thing that if we learn that, then it brings peace to other areas. And that we can see it, we will feel it, and we will know it, you know. It's not like, okay, I'll be happy if I learn to communicate. It's not enough. You should be able to see that you're able to hold your tongue when you just want to give something out, you know, in a bad way.
I would have just asked you what would be your word before wrapping up, but I think this summarizes a lot of what is very important in between couples nowadays. Srada, thank you very much for being with us in the studio. It has been very interesting to hear from you. Ladies and gentlemen, we have now come to the end of this episode of Encounter. Thank you very much for being with us. We'll catch you again next time, at the same time, next week on the same channel.